Hey guys, welcome to the Whole Lotta Jesus podcast. This is a podcast where we talk all about testimonies. Right now, we are doing a series called From Student to Graduate, the Debt-Free Way. And this is, I believe, the fifth episode. Today, we're hitting on parents and we're hitting on how parents can help their kids pay for school, what options they have. And today, I have with me Megan Whitehead. She is an LPL financial advisor. She works for Farmers Bank and Trust, and I believe they're based in Arkansas, but I know there's a branch in Texarkana area. And we met, you were at the time a professor at Southern Arkansas University. I had her my senior year for personal finance. And then after that, whenever I was in my master's, she really helped develop Mule Rider Sense, which was the financial literacy program that I got the honor, I don't know why, but I got the honor of helping develop. And it was awesome. She just helps so much with the knowledge of personal finance. So I trust like everything that she says. I think she comes at it from not only like a financial advisor perspective, but also she's a Christian. So she comes at it from a biblical perspective too, and always keeps that in mind. And so I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I think that's a really good introduction. And I do want to start before I answer any questions by saying anytime I talk on a podcast or anything, I get a little bit nervous about giving advice. Because when I do give advice as a financial advisor, there are fiduciary standards that I have to really know your situation to really give you advice. I can't just give blanket advice because it is so personal. And in this case, on this topic, it is very person by person. And so when I teach like personal finance, for example, I always start off, I would kind of do a survey and I would ask a series of questions, knowing that I'm going to get opposite ends of the spectrum answers, right? Like the group is going to be split in half in what they think, right? What they think is a nice restaurant, what they think about should you pay for college for your kids. And a lot of our thoughts about money and our basis about our thoughts and our history is how we were raised, the life experiences that we've had. And then as we learn more, we kind of see those merge. And so there is a lot about, there's actually what I would say more personal about personal finance than there is finance about personal finance. And so even within my job and working with clients, it is very personal. We get very personal about their goals in life, their faith, their values, the things that matter to them, because all of that should shape how we make financial decisions. So, whether it's college or otherwise. So, all of that kind of comes together, but I really want to make sure and kind of give the disclaimer that anything that I say is not necessarily to be taken as face value for your situation because it can vary widely for each person. So,
Yes, thank you. So we're going to answer just a series of general questions that typically parents will encounter when they're getting prepared for sending their kid off to college. And then we're going to have a little scenario game where we're going to do a shuffle and we have different scenarios that she'll answer based on her knowledge and what she thinks is best for that specific scenario. And so the first question that I have is how important is saving for kids' college compared to other expenses like a car or I don't know, I don't want to say prom because that's not super expensive, but I can't think of other costs, but general costs that you will pay for your child. How important is it compared to those expenses as a parent for your child?
I mean, and that kind of goes back to, like I said, I mean, these are priorities based on your life experiences. So there's not a what's more important is going to be based on your experiences. If your parents paid for your college, you may really feel strongly that you want to do that for your kids. You may feel really strongly about paying for college for your kids because your parents couldn't pay for your college and you know what a burden that was on you. So those life experiences really shape those beliefs. Obviously you have to take care of their medical needs. You know, if they need braces, there's going to be those basic things that we have to pay for, and then there's going to be budgetary constraints, whether it's college, whether it's prom, or it's a car, right? And we're not all drawing on the same budgetary constraints, and so we have to look at not only our financial situation and how we budget and plan, but how many kids do we have? You know, you kind of set a precedence with the first kid. And so I kind of come at some of these questions with a little different perspective because I mean, as my going through a college experience with my parents, teaching and working at a university for 13 years is kind of gives you a little bit of different perspective when you've worked with college students and you kind of see those different scenarios play out. And then I'm a mom of three. So I have a little girl that's going to be 9 in just a couple of weeks. And then I have a 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. So I'm going to have three kids in college at the same time.
Oh my
So kind
gosh.
of keep that in mind as I make statements and I'm planning, right? Because this is on the horizon for us. And so some of these things that I kind of hold true are rooted in my life experiences and my experience as a professor and how I want to see my kids have what I call skin in the game. So I really do want my kids to feel invested in whatever they pursue. And a lot of that's based on my experience with students who were in college who didn't want to be in college, who were pursuing something they didn't really want to do, because their parents made them or they thought this was their only option. And so I think at the end of the day, we really have to look at each kid individually and what do they really want out of life? What do you see as strengths and weaknesses with your child? I mean, I don't know what my kids are going to choose to do. I have two daughters that have medical school in their, in their mind at this point of what they want to do, which is wonderful if that's what they want to pursue. But I don't want them to do that because they think I've told them they need to do that. I want it to be something that they care about and that they're really invested in pursuing because it's a ton of work and then you have to really want that for yourself.
Yeah.
So I can't really put an importance on it. I mean, I think college is important, but I will say that our landscape of um, career education is changing. And I don't necessarily believe it's the be all end all for every person. I know a lot of very successful people who didn't go to college. I think it makes it harder sometimes. And I always, kind of say this too for, teenagers that are asking me, having a degree gives you options. So it's not the be all end all. I don't believe that it is the, ultimate and every single person should always do that. But I think that it does give you options and there is more flexibility sometimes when you have the option to do either category. This was actually funny enough, a conversation at Sunday lunch when we were with my in-laws for Easter and my brother-in-law who holds a master's degree. But he now runs, he's a boat mechanic and he runs his own business. And, he's actually made the comment on several occasions that he wishes he had never went to college because he doesn't use it. It's not really made a huge difference in him, but you don't know what that would have looked like had he not done it at 18. So I think that there's things that we learn in life. And I think that if you're praying about it and you're pursuing where you feel like the Lord's leading you to do as he opens doors, we don't always know what he has for us through each of those, doors and what we learn in that process. So I think it's just important that we are praying about it, but also using our brain and making logical choices at the same time. Like, I don't think that, he does give us the ability to reason and think and plan and, but at the end of the day, we have to have faith sometimes that he's going to help us figure it out if it seems impossible.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. So, okay, I feel like this is an obvious answer, but when should parents start putting money back
I mean,
for if they're like, I want to help my kid in college, like when should they start doing that?
when they're born. I mean, ultimately, from a financial perspective only, the biggest asset we have is time when it comes to saving, and we look at compounding and actually, being able to put the least number of dollars in to get the best bang for your buck in the long term. Having that full 18 to 20 years is really important. If you can start when they're born, even if it's small, start small and then add to it as you can.
Yeah, that's
So
good. I
yeah,
feel like the hardest part because we just had our first daughter and we're like trying to financially plan ahead. And I feel like the hardest part is committing to it, even though you don't see it. It's like, because it's like you see things in life that you're like, oh, we could go on a vacation, or we could like get this, or we could do this, or like whatever, And it's like making that conscious decision to continually put money back for something that you're not seeing like right here and now. That is like the hardest part.
I'd say that's culturally, that's the hardest part about financial planning in every area, not just for college or anything. It's delaying the gratification and doing the hard work in the early years. And I will say, if you do that, if you will make the really tough decisions early on and set yourself up, you have more flex to do things differently as you get older, right? You may be able to take more vacations and you plan a little bit different because you've already have this nest egg of retirement, saving started. A lot of those things that you do when you're younger, and if you're consistent in those in your 20s, right, of starting that, it gets easier as you go into your 30s and 40s. If you wait till you're in your 30s to start planning for retirement, you're already late, and you're going to have to play catch up for the next 20 years. I mean, it's not going to happen if you don't start as soon as you start earning income. So as soon as you're making money, you need to start saving for retirement. And this is the thing that I try to always preface to when it comes to paying for college and saving for college is as parents, we need to plan for retirement first. So planning for college is important, but you have to take care of yourself first. It's kind of like the airplane, put your own mask on first. You got to take care of yourself, because what you don't want to have happen is you get to retirement and you're in your older years, or you get a health crisis and you can't afford to take care of yourself, and then you're dependent on your kid, which is, not a good situation to be in either. So you've got to kind of get your own life, mask on, I guess, your life jacket, whatever. Like, you're going to take care of yourself and make sure that you can then be there to support your kid. But you got to get that part started
I like
too.
that. That was
Yeah.
good. Um, okay, so are parents required to help? And are they a bad parent if they don't decide to help pay for college?
So this is kind of an interesting question. And I mean, it goes back to, obviously you're not a bad parent if you can't pay for college, right? Like, that to me is, a very obvious. There's no moral requirement to pay for college. That is not a parental obligation. Plenty of great parents can't afford to pay for college, and I don't think that makes them, a bad parent. So to me, as a parent, right, as a Christian, your first priority is going to be, raising them in the faith and teaching them, why we believe, and telling them our personal testimonies and stories of God's provision in our life. But like, even from a cultural, just a worldly standpoint, raising capable, resilient, responsible adults is our priority, right? It's not to hand them everything and give them a cushy life. And we're definitely not writing them a blank check for, life. So I don't think that, at all, that there should be guilt tied to not paying for your kids' college. It's a major financial burden. And I definitely don't think you can look at it as a failure, if you can't afford to do that. So I think, definitely ease your mind a little bit on that, because that's really, to me, the enemy probably making you feel like a failure and speaking those things to you, because, you got to take care of yourself first. And so don't divert funds that you need to save for retirement to, um, pay for college.
Yeah. And like y'all in the first episode, my parents, like we kind of talked, I think we talked about this before the recording started, but they were actually planning on paying for my school, and then we went to the college like orientation meeting where they kind of showed you like how much stuff costs, all the stuff, and they realized very quickly like we cannot afford this. And my dad had a really good job. I mean, he was making over $100,000, and my mom was, I don't know, she worked at the school, so she wasn't making near that much, but they had good income. Like, we were good middle class. But they were like, yeah, we just financially can't afford that. And I will say, Brist and I go back and forth about what we're going to do with our kids, because putting me in that situation, like at the time, I was so mad at them. I was like, y'all, because they didn't tell me till senior year. So I was like, y'all should have told me like freshman year, that then I could have started saving. And so I kind of went to school bitter, but now being an adult, I am so thankful for that experience, because now like that made me like take money seriously and not just waste it. And I learned a lot. And so we constantly go back and forth of like, are we going to pay for all their school? Are we going to have them pay for it? Are we only going to pay for a portion of it? Because it's like you said, like we want to teach our kid. I don't want my kid to like be a brat and like be entitled, you know? Like I want them to be independent and like know how to like make wise decisions, you know? So, I don't know. But
People
I will
value
say,
what they've worked for, right? You
yeah,
value more if you had what I already referenced skin in the game, but like if you have some sweat equity in what you have, you value it more. When you're given and it's handed to you, it's harder to respect that and you don't look at it the same. And I think that's human nature, right? Where we do have more value in what we worked for. So I think that I don't think there's a right or a wrong, right? And I think it depends on your kids. I want to be able to help my kids, but I don't intend to pay for all their school. That's a financial burden that I don't know that I can commit to for three kids,
yeah,
right? I mean, that's it. It's like, okay, can I fully fund college for all three of you and not let retirement suffer, not let these other things. I don't know. Because I mean, it's really hard to predict 20 years in the future what that's going to cost. I mean, we can do inflationary calculations, but at the end of the day, we don't necessarily know. It has gone up significantly, and Carly and I talked about this before we started recording. But I think one of the things that I've seen at the university level is parents come in, they're total sticker shock. Like they've done no research before this first like visit, really. They kind of come in and like they start talking to financial aid and they start looking at the cost, and it's like all of a sudden they've got sticker shock because in their mind they think college costs what it did when they went to school. And I think even in retirement planning, this is something I see often. What is in our mind of what we think we need to live comfortably in retirement, but what if your retirement lasts for 35 years?
yeah,
What is it going to cost in 35 years? So whether we're looking at what's a car going to cost in 30 years, what's college going to cost in 30 years, what's long-term care or a nursing home or other things, what are they going to cost in 30 years? It's really hard to think about that unless you're actually seeing the numbers and the calculations. And so, I mean, I use financial planning software that helps me show that to my clients and it makes it a little bit more realistic. And it's really, I mean, the software really helps us because we can look at, investment growth, averages and that inflationary cost adjustment kind of all happening simultaneously, which is really cool. But I think not planning out, let's say, and starting in ninth or 10th grade, right? Having a conversation with your kid of, what are you thinking you want to do? Let's start investigating what this costs. And start talking early enough that they have time to plan. I definitely think wait until their senior year. Like that's really hard.
yeah,
I think something we don't talk about enough is ACT prep. Getting your kids really understanding what value that has for them and in scholarships and things. I took my first one, and this, y'all, I'm old. I mean, I'm 41, so this has been a long time ago. But I took my first practice ACT in the ninth grade, which was not normal back then. So I mean, I think that parents, as we have more college educated parents, we have more kids that are kind of going through the system with a little bit more of an edge. But I kind of just was more of a self starter and I did a lot of this stuff on my own. My parents didn't push me or tell me. I don't think they really knew either to tell me to do that.
yeah,
But that was just more my personality, even at a young age. So I took my first one, and then I mean, I started taking it in 10th grade. And so I took it a few different times, but that was what helped me. Each time I took it, I got a higher score, right? And I mean, it went up like 3 points several times in a row. So that really helped. And that's what got me college paid for. I mean, I didn't have any tuition costs for undergrad.
yeah,
So, that was a huge help looking for other scholarships. But I think the overlooked thing that I think a lot of people miss is especially kids that don't really love school or, and I say this is really unfair, but to say that boys, they're less of likely at 14, 15 years old to be thinking about 3 or 4 years in the future. Like that's not a nature of a teenage boy. So you really kind of have to push that and incentivize them, whatever carrots work for your kids, right? Each kid's different. All three of my kids are motivated by different things. I have one of my three that is so hard on herself and self motivated that I don't put any pressure on her because she doesn't need any pressure from me because she's going to put so much pressure on herself. So I don't want to make that worse. But I mean, I have one that's like, he just goes to school. He doesn't love it, but he can do more than he does sometimes. And so figuring out what are those motivators and how do we incentivize him to care more. And um, so I think it's some of it just comes back to parenting and knowing your kids and just sitting down and talking to them. Another thing that I think you have to recognize, I think a lot of parents get hung up on dollar for dollar equality. While I do think, okay, if you're gonna buy this kid a car, you should plan to buy a car for each kid, right? Like it should be some capacity similar.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think it's fair to say, okay, oh, kid A, one, two, oh, we bought you a car, and then you haven't planned enough, and then you've got these other kids that come along and you can't afford to do it because you've got these kids you've bought vehicles for and they're in college, and so you've got all these additional expenses, and now you have these younger kids and you can't afford to do for them. And so there's a balance in there of really having a financial plan yourself to know that when I commit to do this for this one, like that there is some semblance of equality. But I also think that there's like a phrase that I used a lot in teaching, and especially with retirement planning, succession planning for your business, is fair and equal is not always the same. So fair and dollar for dollar equal may not necessarily be the same for each kid. And so I think you have to have some balance in there too. Um, we have 529 plans for each of our kids, and I put money in there, and I have since they were little. Um, but it's not, I don't fund that to the point that I want to be able to pay for college, right? That's there as a supplement to help us, to give us a tax advantage way to plan. But my kids don't know that that's there, and I don't intend to really talk to them about that. It's not their money, it's my money. I own it. They're the beneficiary, but I own that. And so I can choose to do with it what I want to do with it, right? So it's there. And, depending on how it kind of all plays out, if I have one that doesn't go to college and doesn't need it, but I have another one that does, then I may transfer that to my other child. It may not be that you just get a plate, you just get the money.
Yeah.
So the Secure Act 2.0 has really made those more flexible. So now, if you've had the 529 for at least 15 years, and let's say your kid gets a full ride scholarship and they end up not needing their 529 plan money, you can take the Roth IRA contribution amount each year and you can transfer that 529 account into this Roth IRA for your kids. And so if you do over fund and you have money left over, you can really help them get a great jump start to saving for retirement through a Roth IRA. So they have opened that up and made it more flexible that to help, I guess really the goal and everything the IRS does. If Congress gives you tax advantages, they have a motivation. They're trying to give you a carrot to get you to do something. So they want parents to plan for paying for college. So they want to incentivize. And so, when you're looking at your little baby and you have no idea, do they want to be a plumber? Or are they going to be a neurosurgeon? What are they going to do? You have no idea. So if you can't know, you have no idea. It's hard for people to want to put money into a college savings for their baby when they don't know. And so
Yeah.
opening that up gives you kind of an alternative. If you start this when they're little and you put money aside, that there is kind of another use without any kind of penalty that you can use it for. And so I think that's really helpful too.
Yeah, that's good. And then one last thing before we go to the next question. Um, One thing I love about my husband is he really wants to teach our kids like how to creatively think of ways to make money as a teenager. And that is something that wasn't like taught to me. I mean, I like babysat and I did work, but I just love that he's so entrepreneur driven, but he's like we can find creative ways to like if you want something, we can find creative ways to like have you, work in order to get that. And we're not gonna like child labor our kids, but you get what
Oh
I'm
yeah.
saying of like having them like actually earn something and then put that money towards it. I think it creates good work ethic and just so I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but I felt like saying that there are creative ways for kids to make money, before they become like an adult.
Hmm. No, I think so. And I mean, we have to have had to kind of find a balance in that too. Like I don't pay my kids to do basic chores, right? Like that's just part of you live in our house and we all contribute, right? So there's some level of no, you're not getting paid to put your laundry away. No, like that's like a basic expectation. But there are other things that it's like, okay, my oldest is he can mow our yard. Well, our yard's really big. I mean, we've got over 3 acres. Like it takes a while. It's not an easy, and it's a huge burden off of us not to have to do it. So it's like, okay, we'll pay you some money to mow our yard. Obviously, we're not paying him like we would have to pay a lawn care person. It's not that extreme, but we do give him some money and incentivize him to want to do that.
Yeah.
And I've gotten tickled honestly because like sometimes he'll come home and he's like on the lawnmower. We haven't even asked him to mow. He's like, oh, he needs some money, so he's like just gonna go mow the yard.
That's
So I
funny.
get tickled at that. My middle daughter, and her friend, her best little friend, and their mom, I will say I would like to take more credit for this, but really she was with her friend and they were at her house and her mom really kind of helped with this. But they really wanted to raise some money to our little community has a festival each year called Tiger Fest, and they wanted to have a booth at Tiger Fest. So they needed money to buy inventory to sell all their stuff at Tiger Fest. So they really brainstormed and tried to come up with a business idea so that they could make money. And I mean, these were girls. This was last year, so they were in fifth grade, middle of fifth grade,
Wow.
roughly. So they're
That's
trying to come up
cool.
with some ideas. They're kind of young to babysit, right? They're
Yeah.
still young, and so they came up with this idea completely on their own that they would start a trash can business where they take people's trash can to the road and return it. And so they they'll take it to the road for you so you don't have like in there. I think their idea in the beginning was elderly people or people that were busy, like just taking that burden of remembering to take your trash to the road off of them. And I think they were going to charge them like basically 20 or $25 somewhere a month is what they would charge to just come in, and then they rinse it out, they clean it out, right? So in
Wow.
the beginning, like nobody cleans their trash can. So in the beginning, I mean, they were like scrubbing inside these trash cans, getting them clean. Now they pretty much are clean enough. They can just rinse them out and they don't smell so bad, I guess. And so they rinse them out with the water hose and they return them back to their, like where they keep their trash cans. And so they did this for months to kind of raise their seed capital to start their inventory. And they sold out of their inventory and made their money from that. And they're
That's
continuing their trash
cool.
can business. I mean, in reality, this business has puts a lot of pressure on the parents too, because like they can't drive, like they can't go do this. So it does kind of put a little bit of burden on the parents, but they've learned so much. Y'all, they put together their own little Google slide presentation of how they were going to market it. They made their little flyers. They went door to door and talked to people. I
Wow.
mean, they really kind of took this on themselves and did it. And
That
well,
is
I was just
so
kind of
cool
giving you an
though.
idea that I mean, I really can't take a lot of credit. I think it's really been good for them to see on a really small scale what that looks like, right? So they've kind of
Yes.
almost got two little businesses and they kind of really have kept the trash can business going, and they've started talking about what they're going to do at Tiger Fest this year, right? So now they've kind of got, and they've not spent any of it. Neither girl has like taken any payment. So they've done all this work for a year and a half now, I guess, or close to it, to, um, and they've just kind of kept it in this business. So, at some point, I guess they'll either continue on and they'll do their booth again, or they'll just dissolve, what they've done and kind of take their
Yeah.
payout. So it's been good. I think it's been a really good learning experience for them and kind of helps them start thinking about, um, what
Yeah.
that's like. But, I think you kind of need a kid that's a little bit of a self starter, right? Every kid's not going to be motivated the same way. And I think it helped her a lot to have a friend, and it just kind of depends on the child, and we all have to as parents learn our kids and learn, what they want. My boy is kind of at the point where he wants money to kind of go do things with his friends and pay for things that we won't pay for, right? If he
Yeah.
wants a certain type of shoe or whatever that's some ridiculous price, and he's got man-sized 12 feet now. So every like pair of shoes he wants is like ridiculously expensive. And so there's things like that that he, as they start to care about those things a little bit more, that they want to have their own money to buy stuff.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
kind of
that's
motivated by
cool.
that.
So, when should you kind of answered this already, but talk a little bit about like parents informing their kids. Like when should they inform their kids on, hey, we're paying for your school, we're paying for this portion of your school, or we're not paying for your school? Like when should they have that conversation?
I think if you know 100% that you can't pay for any of it, I mean, probably ninth grade-ish. Like,
Yeah.
you need to start saying, okay, look, these are the things you need to be doing to be college ready. If you've got a kid that has their sights set on some prestigious school or even just a really good expensive Division 1 school, which you may be really surprised by what those cost. You really need to start. They need to start thinking about saving. They need to start thinking about scholarships. They need to start thinking about how they're going to find those, and they really need to be worried about their ACT or SAT prep to help get themselves ready. So once their GPA starts to count in the ninth grade, like all of those things really start to kind of come together, which seems really young, but it gives them time to really make a move to get it done. Okay, by junior year, if you can see that they're not on track, like that's not going to work out for your kid, then that's when you start looking at plan B, plan C, like what does this look like?
Yeah.
Um, for me as a finance person, I think there always has to be a somewhat of a financial logical basis to what we're paying and for what. Okay. Does your future career matter where you go to school?
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, for me, like if my kid doesn't have the grades, they've not put in the work, they've not done the things to kind of get themselves there. It may be community college, right? It may be that you go to 2 years of community college. You haven't earned the
Yeah.
college experience that you think you want because it's not the return on investment to spend $100,000 if we can pay $25,000, and like really trying to educate your kids on money. How do student loans work? What is the compound interest on the student loans? How does that look long term? How showing them the numbers and helping them see what they're going to be burdened with if that's the route they take
Yeah.
versus we could actually get out of this with no debt if we choose this path.
Yeah.
And so it takes planning and it takes a lot of difficult conversations, but I think it's important to start earlier.
Yes, that's good. I feel like from experience in college, um, I don't feel like we understand the weight of student loans. It's like, oh, you don't see it. So you're in school. Like I would have friends. I had a friend who did Vista with me, and we were roommates, and she literally like when her student loans started compounding on interest, I mean, she was like, I got to get my master's or something to pause this. Like she basically and
Mhm.
I was thinking, well, how are you gonna pay for that? Like, how are you gonna, but I don't think you think about the weight of what it's gonna cost, like once you actually graduate, compared to because you're in those 4 years of just like, anyways, as they know, I am like, I do not like student loans, and there's no
Yeah.
collateral. It's just a hard thing because it's like at least with a car they can come take it. What are they going to take? They can't take anything. I mean, it's a piece of paper. I guess they could take your degree away, but
Well, I mean, you're just burdened with it. And
yeah,
so, and I've seen this from the other side of things, when you're really aggressively trying to pay those off, with clients that have gone to professional school or they're in the medical field and they do have like a large amount of student loan debt. The ones that are smart who really start to let's get rid of this before we buy a car, before we buy a house, before we do any of those things, is very important.
yeah,
um, I'm maybe for a bachelor's degree, I'm definitely like, let's, mitigate debt to the best of our ability for sure. I definitely think there's got to be room for grace right on professional school because
yeah,
that's really pretty unlikely that most parents are going to be able to help their kids with that. And really, even with master's programs, there's a lot of flexibility in there if you plan and you look into assistantships and even if you work at a university and tuition waivers and various things, like there are ways to be creative with that too if you know in advance that this is what you want to do. And so you have to just it goes back to everything it takes. Knowing early and planning for that is going to help a lot. But as far as the sooner the better. I mean, my son, he's finishing up seventh grade. It changes every day what he thinks he wants to be. So, I mean, it's really tough to say that with your ninth grader. But it's like, look, if you still really want to be a dentist, this is what your high school years need to look like. And these are the things that you need to figure out that you need to do if that's really what you want to do.
Yeah.
Because that may not be the option that's there for you senior year if you haven't done these things, And so I think a lot of parents, and I want to figure out how to say this the best way, like looking at college students who come into, like when I was teaching personal finance, the ones that have the best grasp on debt and budgeting and saving and just finance in general are the ones whose parents have taught them these principles, right? So I think that's at its core is, are you talking to your kids about money? And I know that that's a really tough thing. And I see it generationally too, even with clients who are planning their estate. They don't want to bring in their adult children to talk about money. It's like we've made it's like this little private bubble and we don't want to share and we don't want to don't want our kids to know that there's money waiting for them, or we don't want our kids to realize how bad off we are, right? So if there's two ends of that coin, and I see it on both sides. They don't want their kids to know that their parents have millions of dollars, right? That they are set to inherit, or we're just really embarrassed by where we are and we don't want to talk to our kids about it, which both sides are important in my opinion, because if your kids are set to inherit a large sum of money, it's important that they recognize that and that you're having conversations and you're laying the groundwork of expectations with them to have conversations of how we accumulated this, why, and our goals with charitable giving and various things, that you pass that on to your kids. It's important that you talk to them. So either side of things, I think it's really important that we're talking about it and not just in numbers and cents, but really the values and the core things that are going on behind the scenes behind that.
Yeah.
So I see that for kids that come into college who have a really strong foundation, it's because their parents have taught them. And then you see a lot of interest sometimes from students who grew up with nothing and they see all the bad decisions their parents made and they really want to do better. And so, and then sometimes there's just some that just kind of have a natural knack for it and they just find it interesting. But I see really extremes with a lot of emphasis put on it. And those are typically middle class, upper middle class families who've really talked to their kids about money and they've made good decisions and they try to, reinforce that with their kids. Or the ones that have a lot of interest are ones that, came from where there wasn't a lot, or we didn't know where our next meal was going to come from. And I have had so many students talk to me about their, utilities being shut off while they were in, or getting kicked out of this, rent house and having to move to another one because my parents couldn't pay their rent. And so the kids, those things shape their thoughts about money. And it either perpetuate that cycle or sometimes they make a total 180 and they're like, I'm going to do better, And so sometimes you just see different outcomes with that, but it all influences how we think about it.
Yeah. That's really good. So, what can parents do to help save for their kids' colleges? I know you talked about a 529. Is that the only option? Are there other
I
options?
mean, saving is saving, right? But the 529 gives you the ability to have tax advantage growth, right? You're not going to pay capital gains tax on the money that's inside that 529. There are things, and this is where it gets really specific to individual circumstances. So I really hate to say, okay, this is your option. But the biggest advantage of the 529 is the tax-free growth. Some states are going to give you some tax incentives for those as well. So it's going to be state by state. So one thing that you can even do, and I see this, and I think a lot of parents don't always understand custodial accounts. So like what's like UTMA, UGMA, custodial accounts. So that's you giving that money to your kid. So that's their money now, and you're the custodian until they reach the age of majority. But at most states, it's 21. At 21, it's theirs. Like, and you have no ability, like, it is their money. They can take it all out, they can leave it invested, they can use it for school, they can blow it on whatever they want. It's their money. So the 529 is a little different. And what I like about it is it's mine. The parents own it and you put it towards a beneficiary. And so, but you can move that to different
Yeah.
beneficiaries. So,
Nice.
if something, one kid decides not to go or they have a lot more, you can transfer it to your other children. It's still yours. Um, the 529 does impact financial aid. And so this is where it gets a little bit, if you really start looking strategically, especially for lower middle class families that might qualify for financial aid. So there's going to be a threshold where you're going to make enough money. It's probably not going to matter and you're not going to get Pell Grants regardless. But when you're in that middle kind of sandwiched group and you really start trying to be strategic in how you structure it, you can use Roth IRA funds to pay for higher education. Okay. I'm not advocating this, but it's an option. Okay. That I think is overlooked sometimes. And I want to be really clear. So I've kind of written some of this down because I want to make sure that I'm clear on a few things with that. Okay. So you can use it for education. There's some rules around it. So this isn't just a blanket. There are rules that you want to make sure you follow within line. So the Roth IRA contributions are always made with after-tax dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And so unlike like a traditional IRA where it goes in pre-tax, and in retirement, you can take those withdrawals tax-free. Okay. So you can take the original contribution amount without any kind of penalty and use it for higher education. Now, if you use the earnings, okay, from
Yeah.
that Roth IRA, you're going to pay income tax on the earnings portion. But
Okay.
that part that you've already paid tax on can be used to help fund college. But, and there's a big but, and I want to be really specific about this. The biggest pitfall, do not undermine your own retirement. Don't undermine your own retirement to pay for your kids' college. And I don't know how to be more clear about that. And I think as parents, as mothers, right, sacrificing for ourselves, for our kids is like kind of a very normal thing for a mom to do. But I work with retirees all the time and you have to plan for yourself, like, or you're going to end up potentially becoming a burden on your kids. So it's like, you don't want to burden your kids with college, but you don't want to burden your kids when you don't have the money to fund retirement either. So like, it's, there's a thought process that's going on that you're having to think about things that you're not going to see the ramifications of for a long time. But so the contribution limits are low for a Roth. So you can only put $7,000 a year in there. And that's not per kid, right? Because this is a retirement account that has some flex in there if you need to use it for higher education expenses. So the positive to Roth IRA funds is that they don't penalize you for having that on your FAFSA, right? When you fill out your FAFSA,
Yeah.
those savings don't penalize you for the grants. But when you withdraw, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be careful because it could for the next year. So it's really important that you're strategic in using that because it could impact your financial aid for the next year. So as you really start getting into the nitty gritty of college planning, there's more to it than just making sure you're saving enough because there are some implications on that back end.
Yeah.
And it's so unique to each person and your earnings and your future earnings and all those things that it's really hard to plan for that.
Yeah.
And so I don't like to get too, but if, by the time your kids are in the ninth grade and you're trying to figure out, okay, we're within 4 years of this, like how do I make a plan? At that point, if you have this bucket of money, it's a possibility that we could use this senior year or something so that by the time it actually hits your income, it's not going to penalize you for the next year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's kind of some strategy to that. Let's see, income restrictions, like everybody can't contribute to a Roth. I mean, those are kind of things that I think are pretty basic that most people know. I would only in all caps bold say, consider this if you're on track for retirement. Okay. And you want some flexibility, right? I get nervous to even mention that sometimes because I don't want it to be a derailment for your plans that you already have. So you've got the 529, you've got custodial accounts. You could use the Roth IRA. You could save in a regular brokerage account, like, and just have total flexibility. You can just invest outside of retirement totally. You've already paid tax. You know that you're going to pay capital gains. You know that you're going to have like these additional costs as you make money on those investments. But you can use that for a car. You can use it for college. You can use it for anything, So there's a lot of freedom to saving and investing outside of retirement and outside of any of these tax advantage plans. There is some, benefit to having that kind of flexibility. Um, and then the other thing I do want to say, I know for you guys, like, I know you kind of have plans for homeschool and various things, but like, if you really fund a 529 well, if you end up in a situation where you want to pay for private school, that 529 can be used for private school tuition.
Oh,
So it's
that's
not
awesome to
only
know.
college. Yeah, you can use it for K-12 education too.
Wow.
So if you have a generous parent or somebody that really wants to like put a lot of money into a 529 for your kids, that money can be used for other things, tax advantaged.
My
So
gosh, you just sold me on a 529 because I've been wanting to do it and that just sold me on it.
yeah, I mean, having the flexibility of using it for K-12,
Yeah.
having the flexibility to use it for the Roth IRA for your kid. I mean, to me, it's one of those that I don't think you can really go wrong. And
Yeah.
you can transfer the balance within your immediate family. So like if you don't end up with a kid that goes, you can pay for your own higher education, or you can transfer it to their cousin, or you can just take it out and pay the tax. Like, I mean, it's not the end of the world, right?
Yeah.
If I mean, I think that the advantages are greater than the negatives.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's so
so
good.
yeah.
So, oh, go
No, no,
ahead.
you're
No, do
good.
you have something?
Those are pretty much the next thing I would say about saving and your vehicles is to automate your contributions. That's the best way to be consistent, whether it's
Yeah.
retirement, whether it's college, whether it's anything, is like we need to figure out a way to budget it and you just have it where it happens automatically. That's your best option to do it, because if you wait till the end of the month or you wait and you're not planning, it's probably not going to get done. And so that would kind of be my other thing for anybody that's thinking, okay, I think I want to start a 529, even if it's $50 a month, even if it's $100 a month, whatever you can afford, start early and do a little bit, and it's going to grow. You'll be surprised over the next 10 years what that looks like.
Yeah, I was shocked. I started an IRA with you, and I think I did like $50 a month, and I was shocked. Like, Briston put in more money with, I mean, I don't want to say you're a better
Well,
investor than whoever, but Briston put in more money in his. And I know mine was longer time, so the compound interest,
mm-hmm.
but mine was like substantially higher than his. I was like, we need to do something about this, Briston, because
I mean, that's it. So that's the thing that I would say to anybody that's looking to invest and just start investing is time is your biggest advantage. So none of us, I don't know the scenario around Bristons and like when he put it in, or did he do a lump sum, and what the timing was of that, right? Our best thing is time in the market. It's not trying to time it, right? We don't try to say, okay, we know it's, I mean, you can try to do a little bit of that, but most of us have no ability to really time it. And so my best advice to anybody is just start early and be consistent. Let it dollar cost average where you're buying in, whether it's high or low, it doesn't matter. You're just buying in consistently. And over time, you're going to see
yeah,
those positive results, right? And I'm not meaning next year, right? In a 1 year time frame, anything can happen, right? I mean, we've got COVID. We can go back to '08. We can look at the last 4 months, right? I mean, we don't know what's coming. So nobody can tell you what's going to happen 1 year from now. Or even
yeah,
if you're waiting till ninth grade to start saving. Okay. I can't tell you that in the next 3 or 4 years what that's going to be. But if you start when they're young and you've got 18 years, there's not an 18-year time period in the market historically where you're not going to see that you were better off to have done that if you
yeah, that's
start
good.
when they're young. So if that makes sense. If you look at rolling averages, right, there's no you know,
Yeah.
time period like that.
So we're gonna go to our scenarios now.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I think.
Okay, oh wait, here it is. So, um, I'm going to share my screen and okay, so we have this little spin teal. You can
Oh,
see
wow.
it. So, we're gonna spin it and okay, number 6, which says okay, number 6. Can you see the Canva too?
I can. Yeah.
Okay, so my son is a sophomore at OU, Oklahoma University. I just want to say, very expensive, pristine school, okay? We have paid for everything thus far, so about a year and a half, 2 years, going on 2 years, as long as he kept his grades up. I recently found out that he is skipping class and not doing his work. What do I do? So this is the parent. What do I do? Do I pull him from school? Do I continue to give him money if he decides to go back in the future? Or is paying for college now completely on his own since he knew what he was doing?
I mean, this is one of those like it depends, right? It depends on your kid. I can't tell you the severity of that. I can't tell you, I don't know. I can definitely say, okay, he's a sophomore, so his freshman year, as a general rule, and this is really unfair, but freshmen boys have a really hard time. Like that's really tough on them. And so I will say that I've seen some really successful college students that didn't start out great that first year. What got a hold of them and got their act together? Sometimes it's just, figuring it out. Like they're trying to figure out who they are. So, I mean, that's a very expensive lesson. And so I think that I've seen this play out many times, even like thinking back to my classmates who, I think about one that went to University of Arkansas and came back and they end up, finishing at our local university and living at home, right? That happened more times than I can tell you to just people that I've known. But I've also seen some really successful kids that went off to these really great schools and have done some incredible things. So there's no one size fits all approach to this. But I will say that, like with the students that I've worked with, the ones who just had a free handout that had no strings attached and their parents just kept paying for things, typically they don't get better on their own. If there's not a pain point that pushes them to correct the behavior. If they
Yes.
think they can skip class, have an open, debit card to your bank account, spend as they will, um, they typically are going to continue with that path of least resistance, doing what feels easy. And that's typically with most kids what they're going to do. Obviously, not all of them, but I don't know if that really answers that, but like
No,
that's a
it
really hard
does.
one. I can tell you for my kids probably, but I'm a pretty tough parent. Like I don't have a lot of flex. So like these are the rules, them up front. Like there's going to probably be some tough consequences. I can tell you, I personally would not continue to pay that kind of tuition for my kid to go skip class and move off. Like you can
Yeah.
come home and you can go to community college or whatever, because this is and if you want to earn your way out of that and go back, okay. But I wouldn't personally be willing to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but
I think too, because I was thinking about this. This actually happened to my uncle, which is where I got the situation from. He wouldn't care for me saying that because now he has like a master's degree and he's very successful in what he does. But he did not, number one, he was young. He didn't know what he wanted to do. So him skipping class, he had picked a major that he did not enjoy at all. So I do think it depends on like a part of me is like, if you have a kid that's like literally doesn't know what they want to major in, like, why even should they go to college? Because like they need to like, because for him, he just didn't know. And so he eventually figured out what he wanted to do, but um, he didn't go to OU, but it was just
yeah.
a similar situation of,
Well, and I think about like all the speakers we had come back over the years at SAU when we would do our various like things for alumni to come back and speak. Some of these really successful men would laugh about like their grades or their, especially the beginning of college, and kind of make jokes about like, I can't believe that I'm here because,
Yeah.
I wasn't your stellar model student. And I went last week. I actually was a judge for the final round at the Arkansas Governor's Cup business plan competition.
That's cool.
And so, one of their title sponsors, very successful entrepreneur, he's given, like I think roughly $1 million over the last several years to this business plan competition. After he had sold his business, he's done really well. He actually talked about that. He was a C student, and there are some research, and this is not meant to be anything. I mean, I was an A student and I really cared about my grades a lot, right? Some of this is a personality, and there's a lot when you start studying entrepreneurship and you start studying business owners and people who are willing to take these risks. A lot of times they're not your straight A, they're not your top students, right? They're not.
Yeah.
These are usually kind of your average students, but it's their ability to take that calculated risk. Sometimes I think the really smart students have a really hard time getting out of their comfort zone, and the fear of failure holds them back. And there's some personality things in there that I think are really important. So it means, how are you defining, there's so much more morally and, personally that kind of come into play here of, like, how are we speaking to our kids? Is it
Yeah.
all about having A's? Is it about pursuing what you're interested in and having the flexibility and the ability to be creative? Are you teaching your kids it's okay to fail? And that's one thing that I really learned when I was teaching entrepreneurship. I learned a lot of things about how the mind works and how people are willing to pursue these things. And a lot of it comes back to how they think about success, their ability to fail and know that we're learning from the failure and it's not necessarily a bad thing. And
Yeah.
so how we speak to those things. And so I don't know if you kind of have entrepreneurship as a pursuit you want your kids to find interesting. I think it's really important that you're teaching them that we learn from failure. If we're not failing at something, we're not trying hard enough, and we're not trying new things. And it's kind of important to talk to them about those things. Make sure they know they have a safe space to do that.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, next one. I don't think it would land on the same one. Okay, we'll just do number seven. It literally landed on the same one.
Oh wow. Okay.
Okay, we'll just do number seven since it's close to it. So my daughter is in charge of paying for her school and insists on taking online college and living at home instead of in person. She argues that she can pay for it in cash and move quicker through her courses this way while still working a job. So basically, I didn't finish what should basically this parent. I don't think I finished typing it before I realized.
Uh-oh.
Um, my mindset for this was that this parent wants their kid to like move out
Mm-hmm.
type of thing. So what's your foretake on that perspective?
So thinking about taking online classes as a student and teaching online classes, right? I can put myself in both seats. And looking at the hundreds of students that I've taught and been involved with, you miss out on a lot of opportunity when you don't get to know your professors and your peers. When you kind of stay inside that bubble and you don't network and put yourself out there to meet people, it makes it really difficult to capitalize on and utilize the opportunities that are presented to you. So I think about, I've got a lot of former students that are still in contact with me, and I may get a phone call periodically and they're just having a career, dilemma or a question, and they just know they can come to me and they'll call me and we can visit through it, talk about it, and weigh things out. But that's because we have a relationship, not because I taught them online necessarily, right? Because we got to know
Yeah.
each other and they feel comfortable even years later to come back and say, hey, I have a question. I think you might can help. So whether it's meeting an alum and that's your entryway to a new job, I think about one of my former students who's literally, I got a text last week. She's loving her new job. She started in January And she got this job because she got paired up in a mentor mentee program with an alum. And that's how this door opened for her to get this job. And she loves it. And it's been great. But she wouldn't have had that if she hadn't put herself out there to be involved in those things. So I think involvement is really important. And I get this a lot because we live close to Southern Arkansas University, and so we're in a more rural area, and it's expensive. Room and board, I think that's probably one of the biggest sticker shocks for people. They may look up tuition costs, but they don't factor in the room and board. Living on campus is really expensive. So a lot of parents will discuss, hey, I think we're just going to let them live at home, or they have a scholarship, but they'd rather just live at home. And I really encourage at least your freshman year to live on campus and get involved, because I see how important that is for the whole 4 years. If you can get involved that early, you're more likely to stay involved even after you move off campus. But if you don't get involved in the beginning, it's really hard to get plugged into those things, and it's really hard to do that if you come for class and go home and come and go. And so I think I would encourage them to take as many face-to-face classes as they can. If it has nothing to do with your major, and please, if you are a liberal art person, don't take offense, but like if you're taking art or music or something that has nothing to do with what you plan to do, I'm not saying that those aren't important to take in person, but if you need some online classes to balance out what you're doing, right, pick classes that aren't where you expect to meet and network people for your future career.
Yeah, that's so good. We'll do one more.
Okay.
Okay, number two. Lost my mouse for a minute. Okay, here it is. Okay, number two. My daughter has a full ride to Southern Arkansas University, which is a D2 school. So put that into perspective. But is insistent on attending Baylor, which is a D1 private school. So way expensive. She is in charge of paying for her school and wants to become an elementary. You kind of hit on this, so I want to do a different one because
Okay.
you hit on this. So we're just gonna move on. Okay, let's do I'm trying to think of one that you didn't hit. Okay, this is an interesting one. So we'll do this one. We'll do number four. My daughter is a senior and was recently offered multiple tennis scholarships to play at West Texas A&M, which is a D2 school, and the University of Arkansas, which is D1. She wants to play in college and is leaning more towards the U of A, which is University of Arkansas. My fear is that she isn't picking a school based on her athletic ability and costs, but on the idea that she could potentially be a D1 athlete. Even with the athletic scholarship, she will owe money at the University of Arkansas and have to take out student loans. If she plays at West Texas A&M, her school will be completely paid for. What should I do? Now, I kind of want to say this from an athletic perspective, but I want to hear your financial perspective because this actually happens quite a bit. I found in college athletics, that when you're given the option to go D1, it's like this, oh, I could be D1. But I want to hear your perspective first before I give mine, on what you think.
Like, I mean, so many things. I don't think there's a right or a wrong. I think you've got to show your daughter, right? Explain to her the financial perspective of this. What are the long-term implications of student loans versus um, having your school paid for? What does that kind of paint her a picture of what this looks like for her 10 years from now? If she does, the local school and it's paid for and you graduate college debt free, what does that look like? If you go and you have to take out student loans and you end up with a large sum of student loans that are compounding interest and all of these things are taking place, what does that look like for her? What are the trade-offs? And so I think about teaching personal finance. One of the key terms that we always talk about is opportunity cost. So, and I mean, I have this conversation with my kids on a regular basis. I try not to ever like talk to my kids and make it sound like I'm being a teacher, but I want them to think about, okay, yes, we can go do X. Like they like to go to the little local convenience store it's called the Tiger Den. They want to go there. They'd go there every day if I take them every day, right? They would go every day to get a treat. Okay, well, three kids, multiple days a week, like it's expensive. So we have a conversation. It's like, okay, but if we do that, these are the things that we can't. Like, there's only so much in this pot of money, right? What do we give up if we do this versus, okay, this is an occasional treat and we have money to go do XYZ, whatever that is for your budget, whatever it is for your family. I mean, I don't know that if she's taking out student loans and she's funding it, it's really your daughter's decision. You can't make that decision for her. I do think it's important that you educate her and you explain to her what that looks like. But that trade off is not something that we as parents can decide. And I think if you tell her you have to go here
Yeah.
and she never gets that opportunity, and that was something that she really desired to prove to herself she could compete at Division 1, or like that was a dream for her, that's a tough pill to swallow 10 years from now if she feels like you robbed her of that opportunity. I can't tell you what that's going to be like. I can't make that. And I think we all have our different experiences with college and with athletics. And like Carley, you'll probably share her experience. I know my husband had a scholarship at a private school in Arkansas to play baseball. And he went and he played freshman year, and he was successful. He did well. But I think throughout that year, he decided, I don't want to do this all 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So at that point, he'd given up the ability to go to SAU, and that changes the scholarship opportunities and dynamic. He didn't want to play baseball anymore in college. And
That's
so that's kind of what he said. He said, I was doing fine. It wasn't a matter of I wasn't getting playing time. It wasn't anything like that. I could have continued on. He said, but like my friends were getting to go do fun things and they were getting to go fishing and I'd have to go to practice. It became like a job and I didn't enjoy it as much anymore. And so he wanted to come back home. But because he couldn't stay there, it was too expensive to stay without the scholarship. So, he moved. And it all turned out great because that's how we met. We wouldn't have met each other had, more than likely we might not would have met each other had he not done that. But that's his experience. So that experience he has influences our kids in athletics, right? Whether they go to college or not, because he has that experience. And so I think there's always going to be a little bit of that experience bias that we all bring into these decisions that are really hard to back away from. It doesn't mean that if my son wants to go play baseball that we're going to tell him he can't. But I think that influences how you lay out these options and the opportunity of what you give up and what you accept. And so I don't know if that makes sense. It's not
No,
really a great
yeah.
answer. And I don't know
No,
that
it
I can say
was.
what
It was
should you.
good. No, that was a really good answer. And from the athletic perspective, I was just gonna say, like, what are your goals? Because my uncle went to a JUCO school and played baseball at a junior college, and then he transferred after 2 years to a D1 school, and his playing time was so different. Like got a ton of playing time at the junior college, and then at the D1 school, he got to say, "Oh, I'm a D1 athlete," but like he barely got any playing time. And I think that's across the board. The sports is like, okay, I even saw this in D2. Like, you could be a really good D2 athlete, compete, get a lot of awards. Not that it's about that, but like, you could like really compete competitively. Or you could go to D1, but like, you're probably not going to be as competitive in that league as you would. And so I just think it goes back to like, what are your goals? What are your priorities? And also you could always like transfer to a higher up league. So like you start D2 and you're like, oh, hey, I'm getting like really good, and
Mhm.
then go to U of A. Because they'll offer you, that happened at SAU. I forget his name, but he transferred to the U of A and became a really good D1 athlete, but he started at SAU. And so I do think like you have 4 years. So just what are your goals?
And I will say, like, over the years of teaching a lot of college athletes, that was one thing that I think gets overlooked a lot is the junior college option. And I think, especially in certain sports, right, where
Yeah.
especially boys, right, because their, maturity sometimes doesn't happen until they're older. And so getting the time to continue to grow physically and develop as a player, as an athlete, sometimes that doesn't happen until they're 20. And so they can start at junior college and play and develop and get better instead of going and you go to all the practices, but you never get any playing time at even a D2 school. And so I think there's a lot to be said for doing that to have yourself prepared for even a D2 school, in the future, if that's really what you want to do. I think that that's everybody's kind of situation. I would encourage my kids to do that. If that's what they had to do to have school paid for, I would
Yeah.
absolutely do that. If playing sports is what you really want to do in college, I don't have a problem with that. But that's one of those scenarios too. Okay, if you have academic scholarships, okay, that's one thing, and you really want to do this, okay, that's fine, but keep your grades up so you don't lose it.
Yeah.
Or if the only way you can get school paid for is to do junior college and then transfer in, prove yourself and transfer in, you're more likely to get a better scholarship even at a D2 school once you've proven your ability at that JUCO level. So I think that there's, definitely a lot to consider. I would start early, absolutely. Find out the lay of the land of what you're looking at with your particular child, and it's going to be different. Like I feel like for me with my three kids, it's going to be a different decision and puzzle to put together for every one of my kids because they're uniquely different. Their gifts are different. Their skills are different. What they want to do may be different. And so I think as you look at your kids, so much of this is not a one size fits all. But I would use the experts, get help, ask questions. Don't assume you've got it all figured out. I think that's ultimately it. Is don't assume it's like it was when you went to college because it's different and it's way more expensive. And so many parents, I think, just maybe people don't like to address financial things when they know they're underprepared. And so I think sometimes we just put it out of sight, out of mind, and we'll deal with it when it comes because we know it's going to be a bear that we don't want to deal with. And so um, I don't know. I think sometimes that's kind of our nature as people, but I think you're going to always be better off if you go ahead and deal with it head on and make a plan.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, thank you for doing this. I hope that it was helpful. I know it'll
Good.
be helpful for them, for parents and stuff. So, do you have any final thoughts before we close out?
I don't. I mean, I think I've said a whole lot. I hope I didn't say too much. I hope this wasn't long and drawn out and boring. But
No.
like I mentioned, I mean, reach out for help. And if you're not actively pursuing a financial plan, there are a lot of financial planners that will even charge you a monthly fee, right? So you can take a whole year to kind of get your financial house in order and get a plan. And they'll let you pay that out throughout the year. So you don't necessarily have to pay somebody a large sum up front. There are, fiduciaries out there that will help you put this together. Interview them, vet them, see what they have to offer and what you think they can do for you. But I would definitely seek that out. And I would encourage everybody to find someone that will help you make this plan, right? Whether it's college or retirement, or really what I like to call holistic financial planning, where we're kind of looking at all of these things and helping you plan out your future from a financial perspective. And those should always be rooted. And when you're vetting these people and you're talking to them, make sure that you have values that align with each other. If they're not asking you about your goals and your values and what you hold dear, they're probably not the person that I would choose to work with. Those things to me should shape how you look at your finances. It's not just a numbers game. And so if it's not personal and they're not getting to know you at that level, then that should be kind of a red flag and keep interviewing and keep looking for someone else. So that would be kind of my 2 cents on that.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for asking me. I enjoyed it.